Hi, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I am Coach Sherry, and I was trying to get the thumbnail to show all three of these characters, but you can see the main one and then the other two on the sides. But this session is going to be about who was Queen Charlotte, and it is my Saturday shout out. So today is day 55 of me going live every day for 90 days leading up to my Sweet 16, which is next month in June. And I don't know how that's going to shake out in terms of, the restart that YouTube always loves to do on your year anniversary with your watch hours. But either way, I wanted to do something that would highlight or put the spotlight on me being 16 on YouTube. Now, it wasn't 16 years of creating content, but I've had my YouTube channel for 16 years. But I want to invite you all in and welcome you in and thank you for tuning in to this session of Who Was Queen Charlotte. So, one of the characters that you can see really clearly in the middle, the center character, you probably recognize if you watch the Bridgerton series that's on Netflix. I believe it's in its third season, and I have really, really been enjoying this episode, or not episode, but this series. And I enjoy it because I love things that are time based, and that are also have some historical components. And then when you put a splash of color in there, it just really, makes it that much more relatable to me. And so I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we are considered the Queen City. And people that live here may not know, and people who don't live here may not realize either. But Charlotte, North Carolina was named after Queen Charlotte. And so she is depicted in this Bridgerton series. And I think they've done a phenomenal job. Of course, there's a lot of fiction behind the storylines, and the verdict is still out. If, or not the verdict, but the jury is still out trying to figure out the verdict if Queen Charlotte was of African descent. Many have said that she is. They said that she is of Moor descent, and the Moors in Africa, and she is Portuguese, but in terms of where she grew up, and I believe she was of German descent as well. But um, in the Bridgerton series, I just love all of the characters that they have of her. I mean, the first series, they showed her in her adult form, and they didn't really go into the background of who she was married to, or her family life. How did she become Queen Charlotte? But in the second series of it, they went into how she came to Great Britain, and how she married King George III. And it was truly a love story. They ended up having 15 children, which was a lot. But she lived to be about 73, 74 years old, which, as you know, especially back then, that was a very long time. Typically, people did not have long lifespans like that because of so many varied diseases. They died at young ages. But yeah, she definitely lived a long life, and her character in Bridgerton is such a strong character. She plays a matchmaker of sorts. But I just wanted to give you more background information on Queen Charlotte and how she's connected to the United States. I know I have people that tune into my channel from different countries, and let me just look to see which countries have been showing up here lately, because I really appreciate all that support from all over the world, literally. So the United States, of course, is at 59%, but then I have viewers in Canada, Germany, United Kingdom, Russia, South Korea, India, Japan, um, Zapistan, and Vietnam. And some of these I hadn't seen in terms of the audience and the areas that they're coming from. But in these past couple of weeks, these are some of the countries that have been showing up. And so, this is going to be a history lesson for those of you that are tuning in terms of Queen Charlotte and how she relates to the United States and how she's become part of the United States, because it's like how is it connected? Well, I'm going to share that information with you. So let me just see. And again, who was Queen Charlotte? So they say that Queen Charlotte again has African ancestry and that's a subject that's an ongoing debate among historians because there's no definitive consensus, but they're saying, these are the key points. This is what is tried and true, is that Charlotte was the wife of King George III of the United Kingdom. She was born in 1744 to German royalty in Mecklenburg-Strelitz. The claim that she had African ancestry was first popularized in the 1990s by historian Mario de Valdez y Cocum, who argued she descended from a Black branch of the Portuguese royal family. So I think I might have said Great Britain, but it was the United Kingdom that she was in, which I think is the same. However, many scholars have dismissed or expressed skepticism about this theory. And I believe this theory really came about from her portrait. And I believe they're going to say this in this information I'm sharing with you too, that her portrait, they are seeing more African features because back then especially, which is so remarkable, they had artists to do portraits. And I love oil paintings. I feel like those are the most timeless things. And actually in my home I had gotten my wedding picture, my parents wedding pictures, and my in-laws wedding pictures recreated in the oil painting. And then for our children, for their newborn pictures, we got them recreated in, it's not oil, it's like I forget what type of material they used or what type of technique they used, but they recreated the actual picture so that it could be a big portrait like that, something that's timeless that will stand the test of time. I think that that is just to have that type of artwork in your home. I think it makes it a home. It's not just random pictures, although random pictures are beautiful. You may have a beautiful art gallery from your travels, picking up prints and getting them framed, or purchasing beautiful artwork, but it's something different. It hits different when you can put your family's pictures in beautiful museum type art frames, and it's showcasing your family. I first recognized that when I went to, he's retired now, been retired, but he played for the New Orleans Saints. And I remember when he and his wife built their beautiful home, and when I went to go visit and I looked around, and all of the artwork she had was of big, huge pictures of their children. They had three children as well. And, family pictures. And that's the only artwork she had. But the frames were gorgeous. The frames were, again, they were like museum quality frames. And I was fortunate to find those types of frames as well. But it just hits different when you have your family pictures around, and especially when you repurpose them or get them, done up in a different way other than just in a photograph. But at any rate, descriptions of Charlotte's appearance during her lifetime did not mention African features. The claim is largely based on analysis of her portraits after death. The term Moor, used to describe her alleged African ancestor, did not necessarily mean Black, but could refer to anyone from Moorish regions of North Africa and Spain. After centuries, it is highly unlikely any African ancestry would be visible in her features. Buckingham Palace has stated the theory is rumor and not worth significant attention. Mainstream historians argue there is no credible evidence to conclude Charlotte had African ancestry. The theory remains unproven according to fact checkers. While the African ancestry claim has gained popularity, especially after being incorporated into the Netflix show Bridgerton, most scholars find the evidence inconclusive at best. The debate continues, but the theory is rejected by many experts. And that's so interesting that, that's what they're saying because here in Charlotte, they consider her a Black queen. And this is called the Queen City after Queen Charlotte. So the reason why Charlotte, North Carolina, in the United States, and that's for those of you who are tuning in from other parts of the world. Charlotte, North Carolina was named after Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, the wife again of King George III of Great Britain, to honor her and potentially gain favor for the city to become the county seat. So the specifics around that is that, and the interesting thing, because part of her name is Mecklenburg, and Charlotte, North Carolina is in Mecklenburg County. So it has both of her names. So the area was first settled. So Charlotte, North Carolina was first settled around 1755, and initially it was called Charlottetown by the European colonists after Queen Charlotte. And there are still some areas that's called Charlottetown, which is really interesting, I'm finding. And then in 1768, the city was officially chartered and incorporated as Charlotte by the colonial North Carolina General Assembly. The settlers chose to name it after Queen Charlotte in order to honor her husband, King George III, as well as to potentially sway the assembly into making Charlotte the county seat and location for a courthouse and prison. Mecklenburg County, where Charlotte is located, was also named after Queen Charlotte's birthplace of Mecklenburg-Strelitz in Germany. Now, the interesting thing for Charlotte to have this type of researchable history, and for Charlotte to be such a booming city right now, one of the fastest growing cities in the country, I believe is the 15th fastest growing city. Over 100 people move here every single day. You would think that Charlotte was the capital of North Carolina, but it actually is not. Raleigh, North Carolina is the capital. So Charlotte was deliberately named by its founders after the queen consort of Great Britain at that time, Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, as a gesture to honor the crown and increase the new city's stature and prospects. So remember, this is before the Revolutionary War, so they were trying to show that respect to the crown. So Charlotte, Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz was alive from May 19th, 1744 to November 17th, 1818. And she was born on May 19th in Moreau, Duchy of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, which is part of Germany. And she married King George III of the United Kingdom on September 8th, 1761, at age 17. And from that marriage, she became queen consort. And if you look at the Netflix special or series, Bridgerton, in the second portion, the second part, because there's three parts so far. So the second part, they show her as young Charlotte and how that was an arranged marriage. Now, Shonda Rhimes, and if you all remember or have experience with many of her other successful series, Shonda Rhimes is the executive producer of Bridgerton. However, Julia Quinn is the writer of the book that the series is made after. And so Shonda Rhimes decided to showcase Queen Charlotte as a woman of color. And it was a very interesting how people of color back then, were introduced to the royal families. I mean, they were royalty in Africa. Some of them were, had more money than the royal family in England. And in the series, especially the second part, it showed that. And it was just very interesting to see that. And I was always cross checking some of the history. Of course, a lot of it was based upon fiction characters and times and events, but it was just interesting, just looking at the clothing. I love the music selections. They've taken some current music and used instruments that were more well known and used back then, and recreated, revised the current sounds that we have today, but using again the same type of instruments from back then. And it's beautiful. The music is so beautiful that they used. So Queen Charlotte served as consort for 57 years until her death on November 17th, 1818, at age 74. She died at Kew Palace in the presence of her son, the Prince Regent, who was also the future George IV, who was holding her hand. Her funeral was held on December, let me see, she died in November 17th, but her funeral was held on December 2nd, 1818, at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, where she was buried in the royal vault commissioned by her husband. Now, that's interesting. So she died on November 17th, but wasn't buried or wasn't funeralized until December 2nd. And I'm just wondering, like, how did they preserve her body back then? And I know that they had many techniques, but I'm wondering, what techniques did they use then? And are we still using those same embalming type of techniques? Like, how do they preserve her? So Queen Charlotte lived from 1744 to 1818, a span of 74 years, with the majority of her life spent as the wife and queen consort of King George III from 1761 until her death. And her and King George III had 15 children together. And I believe the majority of her children, well, only except for a couple, out of the 15, it looks like only two died in childhood and the rest lived until full adults. So she gave birth to 15 children over a 21-year period, though two of their sons, Octavius and Alfred, died in childhood from smallpox, and the remaining 13 lived into adulthood. Now, again, for that time, I mean, smallpox was really devastating all areas of the world. And the fact that out of 15, 16, figure 17 people altogether, it only impacted two, which is remarkable. But 21 years and 15 children, oh my goodness, she was pregnant probably all of the time. So, in the Netflix series Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte is depicted as a powerful and influential figure in high society during the Regency era in England. Here are some key details about her character. And I'm telling you, if you haven't checked out Bridgerton, I recommend it. Again, this is Who Was Queen Charlotte, and it is my Saturday shout out. So, Queen Charlotte is the wife of King George III and the Queen Consort of Great Britain. She is known for her regal bearing, sharp wit, and keen interest in influencing the elite social circle known as the Ton. She takes an active role, and this is her character in the TV series or the Netflix series Bridgerton. She takes an active role in the marriage prospects of young ladies by declaring the season's diamond, the most desirable debutante to be married off. And debutante balls are still happening. I know Delta Sigma Theta sorority, which is my sorority, they do a debutante ball every year. And so it's a coming out of sorts, and other organizations have debutante balls as well. And that's where the young ladies are taught how to, different etiquettes of being a young lady. They wear long white gowns and they have escorts to take them in, and it's a beautiful thing. I know Jack and Jill has a debutante ball of sorts, and I'm calling them all debutante balls because that's the premise of them. And they are just a coming out. And I remember being in a debutante ball, and it was a great event, exciting for young ladies for sure. She meddles in the romantic lives of the Bridgerton children, especially trying to push her nephew, Prince Frederick, onto Daphne Bridgerton as a suitor. Her marriage to King George III is portrayed as loving but strained due to his deteriorating mental health, which she tries to manage discreetly. And it's interesting that they would put that it is portrayed as being strained due to his deteriorating mental health. You know, just because one spouse or the other is suffering from something that's not making them quote unquote the same, be it mental or physical illness, that doesn't mean that it's a strain. When you take your vows, it's in sickness and in health. And if you take your vows seriously, and I'm not sure what the vows were back then, but those are part of the vows now. If you take it seriously, then it's not a strain. It's only a strain when you don't take your vows seriously and you're expecting everything and everyone to be the same until death do you part. And that does not always happen, especially if you remain married for many years, going into different decades of life and different stages of life as well. So I have to speak up on that. I've been married for 29 years, and yes, things do change, but it's not a strain. It's just you have to pivot or do things a little different. And the show also explores the controversial theory that Queen Charlotte has some African ancestry, which is visually represented by her being played by a black actress. And the actress is Golda Rochevelle. In the prequel spin-off, Queen Charlotte, her younger self, played by India Amartya, is shown arriving in England to marry the young King George, Corey Maltcrist, in an arranged marriage. Now, side by side, the younger Queen Charlotte and the older Queen Charlotte, side by side, they favor, but they don't really look as much alike as they did to me when I didn't see them side by side. So when the prequel came out, and that was the second series, I was like, wow, they were spot on with the younger Queen Charlotte. They really did a good job with the even the aura. So it did make her look much more like Queen Charlotte. I think it's because she had her posture, had her um she had her characteristics, like her personality was very much like the older, and you can see how it was going to develop into the grown woman that she became. So in Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte is depicted as an influential, strong-willed monarch who shapes the societal dynamics of the ton while also dealing with family struggles behind palace doors. So I really I I highly recommend that you check out the Netflix series. If you have Netflix, because Bridgerton is definitely very diverse. I also like that about it. It has a very diverse cast, and even though it's a period piece of many decades ago, centuries. Well, that's yeah, a century ago. Um, is it? Yeah. Um, it still is showing how everyone was just flowing. Back then, it was about your title and the amount of money you had. I don't think they focused as much, at least on the show, they're not showing that they focus as much on the color of your skin. Um, I know that there was a moment in the second part where they were looking down upon some of the black royals, and when Queen Charlotte came, she was making sure, or one of them was making sure, like, listen, we need to get into position because we are just as good as them, better in some cases, but we're not always invited to the table. And so Queen Charlotte made sure they were invited to the table, but they had to check the person who was the monarch before Queen Charlotte, and that was Queen King George's mom, Queen George's mother, And she was like, my family has more money. This is one of the other black royals. My family has more money than you, in I forget what part of Africa her family was in at that time. And again, this is the 1700s. And I just love anything historical, timepiece. Even though is based on real things, but it has a fictional storyline. It's still a great series. And again, they're in the third season, and the first and second season. I want to say I don't know. It's kind of close of which one I liked better, because the first season, Queen Charlotte was already of a certain age, but the second season went deeper into who Queen Charlotte was and how she became. And I love having that background information like that. It actually makes me want to read the book. And I'm just wondering, I'm actually going to look maybe on YouTube. There's someone that had maybe interviewed the writer of the book, because I would love to know how she did her research, as well as Shonda Rhimes. I would be interested in knowing, like, why did she put that type of twist on the character. But I'm telling you, for Charlotte, North Carolina, being the Queen City, they always, one of the logos is a crown. And the statues of Queen Charlotte definitely has more fuller features of someone who does have some African descent. So I don't know which information Charlotte, North Carolina got theirs from, but I believe they depict her and believe her to have African ancestry. So when you come to Charlotte, North Carolina, I invite you to look around. There's statues here and there of Queen Charlotte. If you fly in, one of the first statues you'll see right outside of the airport is a statue of Queen Charlotte. And if you go into the uptown area by Wake Forest, they have a satellite campus in uptown Charlotte. I believe it's on, I can't remember the street, maybe College Street, near Trade Street and North Tryon, I think. But if you go to the Wake Forest satellite campus, right in front, they have a picture of Queen Charlotte as well. I encourage you also to do your history research. And I hope you found it very interesting to know that Charlotte, North Carolina is named after Queen Charlotte of Great Britain, and our county, Mecklenburg County, also is part of her name. So I just wanted to come on here to honor my going live every day. But I also wanted to come on here to share this information with you, because this is what I do and it's my pleasure sharing it with you. So this was Who Was Queen Charlotte and Saturday Shout Out. I appreciate you for tuning in. For those of you who are watching live but could not get to your computer to say hello, I appreciate you for being here. And for those of you who are watching it in replay, leave a comment. And even for those who are here, when you get a chance and when the video is uploaded, leave a comment and let me know, had you heard of Queen Charlotte before? And if so, what have you heard about her? Did you know that Charlotte, North Carolina was named after a real life queen, and that we are considered to be the queen city? I know there are some other cities in the United States and probably around the country, or the world rather, that may also have the queen in their names, be that they're named after a queen. But I'm here in Charlotte, and that's why this intrigues me so. But, also let me know, do you watch Bridgerton, and how do you like that series? Because I really think it's a great series. But tomorrow I'm going to do a Sunday showcase, and I'm going to try and do some highlight clips, but we may also be going out of town tomorrow. So I'm just going to play it by ear. And hopefully by, let's say, at some point in June. June is right around the corner, because we all know May was trying to get out of here. But I'm hopeful that at some point in June that I will have a set time and schedule. I know right now it's about 12:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so I'm officially in my second day. I'm really in day 56, but I'm not gonna count this as my day 56 live because I started it late and I started it for my day 55. But I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks that I'll have a set schedule of in terms of what time I'm going live so that you can be more prepared and be like, you know what, I'm gonna catch Coach Sherry coming on and see what she's talking about. And every day is definitely going to be a theme, and I'm going to stick with the theme for each day of the week. So, like for instance, today is Saturday shout out, and I'm going to do different types of shout out. It might be a channel shout out, it might be like I'm shouting out Queen Charlotte, it might be a shout out to a new restaurant. You just never know what the shout out might be, but either way, you'll be finding out new information. All right, everyone. I appreciate you for tuning in. It's been my pleasure. I am Coach Sherry.